The Babysitter's Lie, a Mick and Mack mystery. Inspired by the real-life murder of Patricia Lupton in 1959. Toronto, 1948. The city is expanding, the suburbs are booming, and evil is hiding in plain sight. When 12-year-old Lily Moore is found strangled in a snowy construction lot, detectives Mick McCathie and MacNeely are called to a scene that feels more deliberate than tragic. No signs of robbery, no sign of panic. Just a red coat, a missing button, and a scarf tied far too tightly around a child's neck. Welcome back to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast. I'm Jay Nickel, Nickel Investigations, and you're listening to another Whodunit Wednesday and a Mick and Mack mystery, where we step into the world of classic detective fiction. Go back to the golden era of detective fiction and enjoy stories in the tradition of the greats of writing. From Agatha Christie to Raymond, Chandler to John Creasey, these are short stories I hope you enjoy. Chapter 1. A Job for a Few Dollars. The call came in just after dusk. Scarborough's edges were still more farmland than suburb, but housing was going up fast, slab by slab, street by street, pushed outward by the post-war boom. And that evening, just south of a half-paved road called Norcastle Drive, the new city met something older and colder. Mick McCathie stepped carefully over a ridge of frozen mud as wind came knifing out of the east. March in Toronto still held winter's breath, and the snowbanks along the rutted access road had crusted over, gray with grit, streaked with slush. Patrol cars idled nearby, their lights painting the rising skeletons of new homes in a dull red and blue rhythm. Just what we needed, muttered MacNeely as he joined his partner, swatting snow from his overcoat and ducking beneath a length of caution tape. Cold, dark, and a body in a pool of mud. They were met by a constable, in a fur-collared uniform coat, his face pale and eyes too wide. It's a girl, sirs. Young. Found maybe 40 minutes ago by some fellows looking for a stalled truck. Mick's jaw tense as he nodded. Anyone touch the scene? No, sir. Just the one checked her pulse and ran for the phone. She was still warm. The girl lay crumpled against a low mound of earth, her legs twisted unnaturally and her arms splayed at her sides. She wore black slim boots, a red wool coat that stood out like a wound against the snow, and a small pink beret, now half frozen to her hair. A scarf, plaid, thick and heavy, was knotted at her neck so tightly it sunken deep into her flesh. Her eyes were closed, peaceful almost. That made it worse. Mick knelt slowly, his brown overcoat brushing the crusted snow. He didn't touch the body, but he didn't have to. Seen too many scenes like this to mistake what had happened. Not a fall, not a runaway car. There were no skid marks, no thrown snow, no shattered limbs. This wasn't chaos. This was choice. Mack scanned the clearing, his breath ghosting in the cold. Who brings a girl all the way out here? There's nothing here but mud and model homes. Someone who didn't want to be seen, Mick muttered. A crunch of approaching footsteps announced Dr. Kendall, the city coroner, thermos in one hand and cigarette clamp between his lips. He looked like he'd come straight from a bad play, rumpled, slightly theatrical, but sharp as broken glass. He dropped to one knee beside Mick, nudged his glasses up his nose, and examined the scarf. Plaid wool, knotted twice, deep grooves. He used it like a garrote, exhaled slowly. No blunt force trauma. No tire marks. No bruising that matches a bumper or a hood. Her boots are clean. She didn't walk here. Kendall stood and sipped whatever terrible coffee carried in that dented thermos. She wasn't hit, he said simply. She was held, strangled, very deliberately. Mack let out a low whistle. 12 years old by the look of her. You think it was? Let's wait, Mick said too quickly. The silence stretched across a clearing, broken only by the wind rattling through scaffolding and the distant sound of a dog barking. Somewhere just beyond the line of half-built homes, a new family was probably moving in, unpacking boxes, hanging curtains. And here was this child, discarded in the dirt like the world had no more use for her. Mick stood, brushed the snow from his coat sleeve, and turned to Mack. Get her name, find the man who found her. For God's sake, someone get that scarf undone. Chapter 2. The List at Henderson's Grocery. The Moore home sat on a narrow street of modest bungalows, their chimneys coughing out smoke into the raw March air. A pair of rubber boots leaned against the porch steps, half filled with snow. A tricycle lay in its side by the hedge. The front door was still open just a crack, as though Lily might be coming back any moment now. Mick took off his hat as he stepped inside. Mrs. Moore sat stiffly on the chintz couch, wrapped in her own arms, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. The kind of dry that comes when there are no tears left, only air and silence. A neighbor hovered nearby, holding a chipped teacup no one was drinking from. She had supper early, Mrs. Moore said softly. Beans on toast. She was always so excited when someone called for work. Mick nodded gently. When did the call come in? 5:15. Voice was distant as though she was replaying the moment for the 100th time already. A man, very polite, said his name was Mr. Jameson. Said his son was ill and needed someone to sit with him while he and his wife went to the hospital. Did you speak with him? I did. He sounded... Her brow tightened. Worried, but kind. His voice shook a little. I thought maybe it was the child. Maybe he was in pain or something. He said he lived near Kennedy and Lawrence. He said his wife would meet Lily outside the pharmacy, 6:30 sharp. She turned to look at Mick now. Really looked at him. It was her first job outside the neighborhood. We never let her go far before. But she wanted to earn money for camp this summer, so she wrote her name on that list. Mick glanced toward a sideboard where her calendar hung askew. A red check mark circled today's date. What list? Mack asked from behind, gently stepping inside. At Henderson's grocery, Mrs. Moore replied. There's a board by the entrance. People post notices. Odd jobs, sales, furniture, that sort of thing. The girls, Lily and her school friends, put up a handwritten note. Just their first names and phone numbers. Said they were available for babysitting evenings and Saturdays. Who else was on it? Mick asked. Mrs. Moore hesitated. Connie, Ruth, and Edie, I think. They wrote it all in pencil, thumbtacked it right next to the one for the window washer. They took it down last week, Mack added, flipping through his notebook. We heard the manager made room for a war surplus ad. Somebody selling extra blankets and canned peaches. Mick sighed and looked at the floor. He must have taken note before it came down. Mrs. Moore blinked. He? Mick crouched down in front of her. I don't want to alarm you, Mrs. Moore, but we think whoever called your daughter did so under false pretenses. We don't think there was ever a sick boy or a hospital trip. This was planned. She nodded slowly, then looked down at her hands. I had a bad feeling. After she left, I tried to shake it. Told myself I was being foolish. But when she didn't call by 7, her voice caught then broke, but no tears came. Just a cracking of ice around a mother's heart. She promised she'd call the moment she got there, she whispered. She always kept her promises. Mick stood, his expression grim. She did. And we'll keep ours too. Mack touched Mick's elbow as they stepped out into the evening gloom. So we're thinking this was premeditated, he asked as he walked toward the squad car. No doubt, Mick muttered. He picked from a list. 4 names, 1 answer. The board's gone now. Just another patch of cork. We're already a step behind. Mack exhaled and adjusted his fedora. Let's find the other 3. Chapter 3. Almost Victims. The next morning brought a gray, slushy dawn and a trail of names that hadn't yet turned into headlines. Mick and Mack visited 3 homes before breakfast. 3 doors that still opened to laughter. The girls with ribbon braids, scuffed shoes. The mothers with nerves held together by hairpins and habit. They started with Ruth's family. Her father, a tram conductor, led them to a cluttered parlor where Ruth perched nervously on the edge of a piano bench, twisting a bit of fabric in her hands. The phone rang around 5:30, she said, eyes downcast. But Ma was already on it, talking to Aunt Nellie. I heard it clicking for a while, but nobody answered. She glanced up, worry flickering in her face. That could have been him, right? Mick nodded. Possibly. She swallowed. He could have picked me. Mick didn't correct her. He just gently closed his notebook. Next was Edie. She had a cold, which might have saved her life. Her mother greeted the detectives in house slippers, her robe tied too tightly. Edie's still in bed, poor thing. When she told me, someone called around 5. A man. Asked for her by name. Said he needed a babysitter right away. Edie's pale face peeked out from under a pile of quilts. I told him I had the flu. He said, that's too bad, and hung up real fast. Did he say who he was? Mick asked. No, just that he'd seen the notice. Mack frowned as they left. So he tried Ruth, then Edie. Lily was 3rd? Or 4th, Mick said. We still got Connie. Connie McGrath lived above her grandfather's tailor shop in Birchmount. She met them on the shop floor, a spool of thread in one hand and her school bag in the other. She was 13, bright-eyed, with a wariness in her gaze that said she'd already knew what the visit was about. I didn't answer the phone, she said. Mama did. She said some man asked if I was free to babysit. Said he got my name from Henderson's. She told him we were out that evening. And that was it, Mick asked. No, I picked up the receiver upstairs, just listening. He sounded, she paused, lonely, or fake lonely, that kind of forced concern, like he was trying too hard to sound nice. Mack raised a brow. What does that mean? You know, like when someone says please, but they're not really asking? She looked Mick in the eye. He gave me the creeps just from his voice. As they left, Mack pulled out his notebook and stared at the sequence. 4 girls, all between 11 and 13. All from the same block, all on the same list. This wasn't about watching kids. Mick lit a cigarette and leaned on the squad car. No, it was about choosing one. He looked back at the tailor shop, and Connie's silhouette in the 2nd floor window, watching them go. This wasn't about babysitting, he said. This was a hunt. Chapter 4. The Man in the Grey Overcoat. Back at the station, the kettle hissed on the hot plate, while Mack scribbled names and times across the blackboard. The babysitting list had turned into a spider's web, and every line ran back to the same center. A phone call and a lie. Mick stared at the case folder without opening it. Let's go see Connie again. They found her at the tailor shop. pinning fabric with her grandfather. She came down to meet them by the back door, cheeks pink from the cold, hair tied back with a bit of ribbon. "There's something else," she said without preamble. "I didn't think of it till after you left yesterday." Mick raised a brow. "A couple of weeks ago, me and Lily went window shopping on Danforth. We stopped outside Graham's drugstore, you know, the one with the candy counter? And there was a man." "What kind of man?" Mack asked. She looked past them, memory creeping in like a draft. Gray overcoat, dark hair, clean shaven, maybe 30, maybe a bit older. Kept walking past the store. Then he stopped on the sidewalk and just stared at us. "Stared?" Mick echoed. "Not like a neighbor would, not like anyone you'd want to talk to. He just watched. Didn't smile, didn't frown, just looked." "Did Lily notice?" "Oh yeah, we both did. We went inside, tried to lose him. Thought maybe we were imagining it. But when we came out, he was still there, standing across the street like he was waiting." "Did he follow you?" "We ducked into Simpson's," she said. "Stayed till closing. Then we walked home fast and didn't talk about it after that. Just got scared, I guess." Mick's jaw clenched. "He should have told someone." "We didn't want to worry our parents," she said, her voice small now. "Didn't think it mattered." It mattered. As they stepped out into the cold, Mack muttered, "So he was watching them in broad daylight? Weeks before he made his move." "Planning," Mick said. "Practicing." They were halfway down the block when a paper boy in a Schwinn coasted up, breath steaming. "Detective McCathie?" Mick turned. "That's me." The boy handed him an envelope, crisp and unmarked. "A fellow in a sharp hat gave me a dime to deliver that. Said you know." Mick opened the note, neatly typed, no signature. "Check 1944. Unionville. Emily Travers. Another girl, another scarf. Same silence. J.C." Mick read it twice, then passed it to Mick. "Johnny Chandler," Mack said, grinning faintly. "Always with the flair." Private investigator Jonathan "Johnny" Chandler had a nose for things the police didn't always sniff out, especially when they weren't supposed to. Suave, resourceful, a little too smooth for his own good, Johnny was as likely to quote Shakespeare as he was to show up in the middle of a stakeout with a sandwich and a lead. Mick pocketed the note. "It's funny you said something. Girl named Emily Travers. Unionville's north. That's York County, isn't it?" "Wasn't 44, Mick said. Girl found dead in the woods, strangled with her scarf. No arrests, no answers. Just a file in a drawer somewhere." Mack lit a cigarette and shook his head. "Think what I'm thinking?" This isn't the first time," Mick replied. They stood there in the cold while traffic rumbled past, lost in the sound of something deeper than wind. The man in the gray overcoat wasn't just a stranger. He was a shadow that stretched backward, and maybe forward too. Chapter 5. Clues in the Cold. The morgue was quiet except for the hum of overhead lights and the dull tick of Dr. Kendall's pocket watch as he marked the time in his clipboard. He didn't look up when Mick and Mack entered, just gestured with the back of his pencil like a professor inviting students to observe a grim display. "She fought," Kendall said simply. Mick stepped forward, looked down the small figure on the table, now gently draped in a white sheet. Only Lily's face and arms were visible, pale and still. Her hands were curled slightly inward as though caught in mid-reach. "No signs of sexual assault," Kendall went on, voice flat but low. "But her trousers were removed, found neatly, too neatly, about 2 feet from the body, like they were placed, not torn or yanked." He reached for a second sheet and pulled it back to reveal a folded pile of evidence. Mick recognized the bright red coat immediately. One sleeve torn on the seam, and one of the wooden buttons, large, enameled, pale yellow, was missing. "That button was found about 6 feet away," Kendall said, "half buried in the snow. She either struggled enough to lose it, or he tore it loose during the attack. Mack squinted, but her boots stayed on. Still buckled, Kendall confirmed, and her scarf, wool plaid thick, was used to strangle her. Double knotted behind the neck, deep ligature marks. He paused. Her knees are bruised, deep contusions. She went down hard, fought like hell. Mick nodded, jaw set. She didn't go quietly. No, Kendall said, finally meeting Mick's eyes. She didn't. Back in the station, Mick laid out a map of Scarborough and began drawing a red pencil line from Lily's home to the shopping plaza. She left her house in Fermet Court at 6:20 p.m., he said. Told her mother she'd meet the man, Mr. Jameson, outside the Tamlin Pharmacy on Kennedy. He drew a small circle. 2 girls saw her talking to someone outside the shop around 6:30. Man, 30-ish, dark hair, holding her arms like he was persuading her. Car nearby, dark with a cream top. Mack leaned over the map, and then she spotted again at 6:35. Gone. Car's gone too. He drew a jagged line northeast toward McCowan Road. By 7:25, her body is discovered by 3 men looking for a stalled truck. That gives them what, 45, 50 minutes? Plenty of time to drive out, commit the murder, dump the body, Mack muttered. Mick tapped the map. Subdivision was still under construction. Empty roads, half-finished houses, no streetlights. He knew that area, or scouted it. Mack scratched his head. So, he calls around dinner time, makes sure she's the only one who can come, has her walk to the meeting spot, lures her into the car, drives her out, kills her, leaves her like she was trash. Not trash, Mick said quietly. A message. He folded the map with care, the red line still visible down the center like a scar. The button, the scarf, the neat placement of her trousers, it's ritual. Controlled. He needed her to die that way. He needed to be the one who did it. Mack exhaled, long and slow. There's a reason he picked her from a list. There's a reason, Mick said. We just haven't found it yet. Chapter 6. False Leads and Dead Ends. The Scarborough squadron was a flurry of cold coffee, scratch pencils, and exhausted men working through lists that never seemed to end. Every tip generated more names. Every name, another door to knock on. Mack leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes with the heel of his hand. I've read the phrase, black Pontiac sedan, so many times it's starting to sound like a hymn. Mick didn't look up from the notepad in front of him. We've narrowed it down, 1946 model. Cream roof, last seen peeling out of the Kennedy Plaza lot at 6:35, just after Lily was seen talking to the man outside the Tamlin. And the plate, Mack asked? Witness says it started with B149. Sounded sure of it. Detective Inspector Adolphus Payne entered without knocking, snow still melting on his trench coat. He was a tall man, graying at the temples with a quiet efficiency that made younger officers straighten their spines whenever he passed. He handed Mick a file folder and sat across from them without ceremony. That tip about the Pontiac. We just finished canvassing 1,943 vehicles. Plates starting in B149 across the city and outer townships. Mack raised a brow. And? Nothing. Closest we got was a dentist in Forest Hill whose car hasn't moved in a week. Mick flipped open the file. Pages of registration info, addresses, occupations. No one matched. No one had even been near Scarborough that night. At least not according to their wives. Payne tapped the edge of the desk. Something didn't sit right with me. The witness who saw the car, young, shaky, said the man sped off, but didn't mention tire noise. Said the car had a Pontiac badge, but couldn't remember if it was 2-door or 4. So, maybe he was wrong, Mick said slowly. Maybe. Payne leaned in. So I went back to the plaza. Spent 3 hours canvassing again. Shop clerks, delivery boys, kids working the bottle return. Mack smiled faintly. You? Doing your own legwork? I'm not too old to chase ghosts, Payne said dryly. And lucky I did. He pulled a photograph from his coat pocket and laid it on the table. Local man. Lives on Danforth Road. Owns a 1946 Pontiac. Black body, cream roof. Plate starts with B319. Almost a dead match for the one we're chasing. Mick sat up straighter. We talked to him? Just came back from his house, Payne said. Wife says he's been a nervous wreck since Monday. Finally admitted to being at the plaza that night. Said he parked near the Tamlin to pick up his wife's prescription. Saw a commotion, got scared. Thought someone might blame him, so he bolted. Mack blinked. Didn't even collect his change, I bet. Nope. He's got no record, no motive, and no connection to Lily or any of the other girls. Co-workers confirm he was in the plaza for all of 10 minutes. Too short a window. Cleaned out the car, not a trace. Mick leaned back, disappointed but not surprised. Another false lead. Payne nodded. Still, we got a partial truth. Witness memory's flawed. Plate numbers can be off by a digit, but the car? That still matters. Mick tapped his fingers on the desk. Black Pontiac, cream top. That detail keeps coming up. Almost like he wanted to be noticed, Mack muttered. Or like he didn't care anymore, Mick added. Like he knew how quickly a good scare could make people forget what they saw. Payne stood, gathering his coat. We'll keep checking. You're looking for someone smart, someone careful. This wasn't his first lie. He paused at the door, and I don't think it'll be his last. Chapter 7. The Unionville Parallel. The file arrived by courier, sealed in a battered leather folio, with a note clipped to the top. Figured you'd ask eventually. Don't lose it this time. Johnny. Jonathan Chandler, private investigator and occasional pain in the neck. Once worked as a detective in York County, before a fallout over some undisclosed matter left him semi-retired, semi-employed behind a desk, piled with unpaid invoices and empty matchbooks. But what he lacked in job stability, he made up for in memory. Mick opened the file at his desk, Mack leaning over his shoulder. The first page was a photograph, faded and grainy, but enough to make Mick's stomach knot. A little girl in a checked dress and winter coat. Emily Travers, age 9, missing since January 1944. Found 2 weeks later in a wooded patch near the Rouge River. The case notes were eerily familiar. Last seen walking to a neighbor's house to return a borrowed book. Strangled with her own scarf. Clothing slightly disarranged, but no signs of sexual assault. Body dumped near a rural track, partially covered by branches. No suspects, no witnesses. Case went cold by summer. Mick flipped through the remaining pages, feeling the echo of Lily's case in every line. Same age bracket, he murmured, same method, same scarf. Same style of dump site, Mack added. Secluded, accessible by car, not far from where the girl lived. Mick reached for the city map and unfurled it across the desk. He marked 2 red X's, one in McCowan and Ellesmere, where Lily had been found, and the other farther north at the bend in the Rouge, where Emily's body was discovered 5 years earlier. The distance between them just under 5 miles. Same hunting ground, Mick said quietly. Different years, same man. Could be, Mack said, or it's someone who remembers the Travers case and is copying it. Mick shook his head. Too obscure. Emily's murder barely made front page. Too long ago for a mimic. This feels lived in, familiar. Before Mack could respond, the front desk buzzed. A few minutes later, a stocky grocer named Charlie Bornstein stood nervously at the squad room door, hat in hand and snow still melting on his coat. I don't know if it's helpful, he said, eyes darting. But my wife saw the posters in the plaza and said I ought to tell someone. Go ahead, Mick said, motioning to the seat. It was maybe 2 months back, just after the New Year. A man came into the shop, well-dressed, polite, bought milk and a tin of kippers, then asked if I knew any girls in the neighborhood who did babysitting. Mack raised a brow just like that. Like he was asking for the time, Charlie said. Said he had a daughter, sick wife, no help at home. I said I didn't know anyone, and he smiled, said thanks anyway, and left. You remember what he looked like? Charlie hesitated. Not really, just average. Tallish, hair maybe dark brown, no accent. But now that I think of it, he didn't buy bread or anything fresh, just stuff that keeps. Mick leaned forward. You sure this wasn't before the notices went up at Henderson's? Positive. Maybe a week before. Funny thing is, he came back 2 days later. Didn't buy anything. Just stood the bulletin board by the front like he was reading it. But there weren't babysitting notices up yet, Mack said. Exactly. Mick exhaled, slow and deliberate. He was scouting. Chapter 8. The Boarding House Inquiry. Mack arrived at Division 14 just as snow began to thicken into a proper storm. Inside the station was busy with the usual complaints. Drunken husbands, noise disturbances, the dog that bit the mailman twice before lunch. It was something in the back office that brought Mack here. Sergeant Myron LeClaire met him at the duty desk. Big man, greased back hair, half a donut in his hand. You're here about the creep from Etobicoke. That's right, Mack said, removing his fedora and shaking out the cold. He's still here? Being held for observation. 2 days psychiatric remand. Toronto Psychiatric has him now, but we got him on a technical. Calls to a girls' boarding home, dozens of them. LeClaire led Mack down the corridor and into a records room that smelled like linseed oil and old file folders. Pulled a slim folder off the shelf and opened it on the desk. Guy gave his name as Mr. Jameson. Sound familiar? Mack's mouth went dry. Too familiar. He called the East End house on Sherbourne. Asked if they had any girls 13 or under who might be looking for work. Boarders, he said, or babysitters, or anything. Mack's voice was flat. Anything? Didn't specify. Just repeated himself a lot. Too much. Head matron got spooked and called us. We picked him up. He was staying in a boarding house under a different name. Mr. Chambers. LeClaire tapped the folder. No priors. Parents are dead. A strange brother out west. He's got money, trust fund kid maybe, but imbalanced. Any connection to Lily Moore? None that we can prove. No fingerprints on record, nothing in time to the scene. This is what we found in a suitcase. Produced a box, opened it, and carefully lifted out 3-line notebooks. Mack opened the first one. It was chillingly neat. A small looping hand had recorded dozens of entries. Sylvia W. 11. Soft voice. South of Bloor. AMP near corner. Edie. 12. Pale, nervous, near Danforth. Flyer said, good with children. Connie. 13. Well spoken. Lives above Taylor. Long hair. Careful. Mack felt his spine go cold. These are the girls from the Henderson list, he said. LeClaire nodded. And more. Dozens more. Each one with an age, a street, A note about appearance or demeanor. Did he ever admit to anything? He thinks they're imaginary, LeClaire said. Or says he does. Told the doc he makes up stories about perfect little helpers. Mack closed the book and set it down carefully. What about the name Jameson? Use it consistently. Signed the guest book that way. Even ordered stationery from a catalog. J. Jameson, Family Services and Errands. Total fiction. Mack stood and unbuttoned his coat. He might not be a killer, he said. But he's one of them. Not this one, then another. LeClaire looked grim. City's changing, MacNeely. Used to be you could let your kids walk 3 blocks and not worry. Mack paused at the door. It's not the city that's changing, Myron. He looked back at the notebook. It's what's hiding in it. Chapter 9. Names pinned to paper. Connie sat in a small interview room at the station, a cup of tea untouched in front of her. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve as she stared down at her school satchel on the floor. She wasn't supposed to go, she said quietly. Lily didn't usually go far, not without one of us. But that night... Mick leaned forward gently. What changed? He sounded urgent, she said, like someone in trouble. Told her his little boy was sick and they didn't have time to wait. Said she'd be doing a good deed. She looked up, eyes brimming. And Lily, she just wanted to help. Wanted to go to Girl Guides camp this summer. She had a goal. Every babysitting dollar counted. Mick said nothing for a long moment. He only nodded and placed his hand over hers. Back in the squad room, he stood silently in front of the evidence board. Notes, maps, photographs. The Anderson list had been recreated. Pinned dead center. 4 names. A pattern of scarf strangulations. No sexual motive. Disarranged clothing. A careful choice of isolated dump sites. The overlap of names and sightings and near misses. This wasn't random, Mick said last. It was his selection. Mack looked up. Saying he didn't just take the first girl who said yes? No, Mick said he waited. He called all 4. Maybe watched them beforehand. When it came to it, he picked the one who said yes because she wanted to help. Because she was kind. He stared at the board as though trying to burn the names into his memory. He used that, he planned it. The list wasn't a convenience. He turned to Mack. It was a menu. Mack didn't argue. Just wrote down the names on a clean sheet of paper, folded it, and placed it in his coat pocket. Now we know what to look for, he said. Next time. Epilogue. Just another ad. The bulletin board at Henderson's grocery gone bare. Mick stood before it with a pair of pliers, quietly removing the last brass tack from the cork. The remaining notices were yellowing. One for odd jobs, another for piano lessons, final one advertising fresh eggs by the dozen. But the babysitting list, the one that started it all, was gone. He folded a scrap of paper, slid into his coat, and walked out into the cold. Across the street, Mack leaned against the squad car, jotting something down in a small black book. The list is gone, Mick said. Good, Mack replied, and tapped the book in his hand. But the names aren't. He showed Mick the page. Connie, Ruth, Edie. Just in case he calls again, Mack said. Mick looked up the city around them. Bustling, stretching outward. Swallowing roads and fields in silence. Somewhere in all that noise, the man in the gray overcoat had disappeared. Into the streetcars, the alleyways, the libraries and barber shops. Just another man. But they'd seen him now. And they were watching the wall. The end. for now. Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Available wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Subscribe to Ontario Cold Cases today so you never miss an episode. Please share your thoughts and questions in the comments. Good night.